Hi friends, we are in the middle of the holiday season, and if you are like me, those holiday treats are coming at us fast and furiously. And so we wanted to just take a little bit of time and teach you about sugar and the different kinds of sugar so that we can make better choices, right? This is all about making better choices, about taking care of our health, being proactive about our health. And so we want to just give you some tools today to help you with that process as we wrap up the holiday season here in December. So the first thing I wanted to point out to you is this. Sugar consumption in America in the last 3 centuries looks like this. In the 1700s, people typically ate 4 pounds of sugar per year. In the 1800s, it went up to 18 pounds a year. The 1900s, 90 pounds per year on average of each American. And finally, in the 2000s, around 2010, we started consuming up to 150 pounds of sugar every year. Now friends, I don't use any white sugar in my house, which means somebody out there is eating my 150 pounds. Let's reverse that trend, okay? Let's get together and choose to reverse that trend. It's so easy. The white sugar is in everything, and it's so easy to eat. So let's start making some choices so that we can get away from it and still savor the sweetness of the holiday season. Not only has our sugar consumption increased, it was one of the most unusual commodities that we have in America. In colonial times, a pound of sugar cost us $2.40. Now it's under 50 cents. In what other industry did something change and decrease in value and make it easier for us to get to? I sure wish our car prices would go down by that much. But the reality is that sugar has changed, and we can get sugar very easily. We don't want to get sugar that easily, but we do. So let's look at this quote from Dr. Richard Johnson. He says, "It seems like every time I study an illness and trace a path back to its first cause, I find my way back to sugar." I was doing some research on this, and do you know that there is actually even a link to some of the sleep disorders that people are having? We have trouble with type 2 diabetes. Everybody's heard about the obesity epidemic. We see so many people that are overweight. We see all these kinds of things. We know our kids are a little hyperactive when they get their sugar in. We recognize that sugar does have an effect on our behaviors, on how we feel. And some of you may be coming off of maybe Halloween or Thanksgiving. Notice that. Maybe you school teachers were really glad for Thanksgiving break because the kids were jumping off the walls. What we need to recognize is that so many of our chronic diseases can be linked back to sugar. That's why it's so important, and that's why we wanted to come to you and reach out to you and just say, hey, what can we do a little bit different? What can we do a little bit different? So the first thing you want to do is understand sugar, because sugar occurs naturally in our foods. It's a natural part of our foods, and we need to understand what different kinds of sugars are. So there's 3 types of sugar molecules. First is glucose, second is fructose, and third is sucrose. So what are these different sugar molecules, and how are they different? How are they the same? So first, let's look at glucose. So you might have heard of a blood test called fasting glucose. Fasting glucose, you can get that with little finger pricks. You can go get your fasting glucose as part of your complete metabolic panel. You can go find that number out. And so what is fasting glucose? That's the amount of sugar in the bloodstream. So we often call it blood sugar, glucose, because it raises blood sugar quickly. And so when you eat, there is going to be glucose in your foods. In all your carbohydrates, those are common sources of glucose, your breads, your pastas. So we think about sugar and we think cakes and pastries. So many times that people come in and tell me, oh, I don't need a lot of sugar, but they're still eating bread, they're still eating pasta. Those kinds of things are glucose. They will turn into sugar in the body. And when you put glucose into the system, your bloodstream can only handle so much glucose. So your body's job is to get that glucose into the cells, make it into ATP, your energy molecules, store it so that you can use it later. This is what we're going to use glucose for. When you eat foods, some things raise that blood sugar very quickly. So this is the conversation around a term called the glycemic index. And sometimes people that have type 2 diabetes, things like that, or type 1 diabetes, they will monitor and not eat foods that have a high glycemic index. So glucose raises the blood sugar quickly. When we are eating other types of sugar, it doesn't raise it as quickly. So the comparison would be fructose. Glucose and fructose are the same chemical molecule. They're the same molecule. However, fructose occurs naturally in our fruits, in our honey, agave, and most root vegetables. So fructose is the sweetest sugar. The crazy thing is that it doesn't raise that blood sugar in the bloodstream quickly. What it does is it sends those molecules to the liver, and the liver must process that type of sugar. So the good thing is that it doesn't raise your blood sugar quickly. So things that have high fructose may have a lower glycemic index than you expect. Because when we think glycemic index high is bad, it's not really that way. It depends on how your body is converting the sugar into glucose to be used for energy. All right, so if we put fructose into the system, it does not raise the blood sugar quickly. It raises it slowly because it goes through the liver, which seems great. Except for it's also the sweetest of the sugars. So sometimes you can eat more of fructose than you should because it doesn't feel quite as sweet as that chocolate cake. Chocolate cake feels super sweet. You get that kind of buzz and you're like, oh gosh, I better slow down. But when you eat an orange, you don't quite get that dramatic change where you might feel it as quickly. The challenge is that fructose turns into fat faster than any other type of sugar. So it's not just about the glycemic index, how fast it goes in. It's also about how your liver's processing it. If anybody's heard of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, this is going to be a situation where you want to avoid fructose more than somebody else. So that's your glucose and your fructose. And there are studies that show that eating glucose and fructose together, combining them, is even more dangerous. So that leads me to the third type of sugar molecule. That is your sucrose. And you know what your sucrose is? Your sucrose is 50% fructose, 50% glucose. That's your table sugar. Sucrose. Great. It's actually the worst kind because it's not only going to raise your blood sugar quickly because of the glucose, it's also going to put a lot of work on your liver. Now we've got your blood sugar constantly being taxed when we're doing that. So sucrose is the worst kind of natural sugar molecule for us. So that's one that we want to avoid as much as possible. There are also a ton of artificial sweeteners because right now, one of the craziest things in the world is we're trying to make things sweet because we as Americans have an overdeveloped sweet tooth and an underdeveloped bitter receptors in your tongue. So if you've ever tried to use some kind of bitter herbs, ooh, Americans, we all go, what is that? Why are we having this bitter? But we have an overdeveloped sweet sensation in our mouth. So we want to recognize that we love it and that we crave it because it's so compelling to us. Now, most of the time, if you do the cake smash with a baby who's not used to sugar, they actually won't like it. If you have one that's had sugar early on, they've already started to develop that sweet tooth. I've used bitter herbs, liquid bitter herbs with babies sometimes, and they don't respond the way the adults do with the, they just, oh, something went in my mouth. They don't respond that way because they don't have that overdeveloped sweet tooth yet. But we do. So we want to recognize that and be able to enjoy the sweetness of the holidays, even though we're dealing with that. So some sweeteners that we should always try to avoid. Number one is called dextrose. Most people aren't going to use a lot of dextrose. You mostly won't see it in your kitchen baking. You're not going to go to the store and buy dextrose most of the time, but you'll see it in your list of ingredients on sweet things. And part of the reason they do that on your ingredient list is what they're doing is they're going to use 6 different kinds of sugars so that they're all smaller amounts in your sweetener, in your product. If the final product, they list the highest amount of the ingredient first, right? If you can do 6 different sweeteners, They'll fall a little lower down into the ingredient list. Dextrose, the reason we don't want to use that one is because it's from corn. And in America, I don't know what the actual number is, but I don't think anybody will question me if I tell you that it's at least 95% of your corn in America is genetically modified, sprayed with glyphosate. This is not something we really want. And dextrose has a high glycemic index of 73. It's considered really high, but it's corn. So one of your other sweeteners that is made from corn is high fructose corn syrup. This was a very inexpensive sugar to make. And when they started making high fructose corn syrup, they put it in everything. One of the things about high fructose corn syrup that makes me totally crazy is that your high fructose corn syrup, in the process of making it, they often use mercury, okay? If you use mercury in the process of making something, but it's not in the final product, it doesn't have to be on your ingredient list. So high fructose corn syrup, nobody says it's got mercury in it. However, there are studies that show that the high fructose corn syrup is where you're getting mercury. So sometimes that mercury poisoning that they talk about, I know this isn't about sugar, but it's important that we know what is in the sugars that we're using. And so the mercury that is in, that we blame the fish for, some of it is from your high fructose corn syrup. And I can promise you, most people drink way more soft drinks than they eat fish. Just keep that in mind. Just a little side note here that I just want to let you know is that one of the things that we started doing at Center for Champions is hair analysis tests. So we can actually now see if your body's dealing with mercury toxicity. So that's something that's super exciting. Look for more information about that in the coming weeks and months. All right, so your high fructose corn syrup. The other thing that is important to notice is they like to change the names of things on us, especially with these artificial sweeteners. They want to change the names so that we can't recognize them. So you might hear it called crystalline fructose now. So that's just an important distinction to know. If you look at a label of ingredients, especially on your sweet treats, and there's stuff I don't recognize in here, don't eat them. Like, you can make it in your house and you can know what's actually in your sweet treats. And so that's what I want to encourage you to do as we're heading into the holidays. Make something that you feel better about. So no high fructose corn syrup, no dextrose. Finally, we always want to avoid the artificial sweeteners. That's going to be your aspartame, your sucralose, which you'll see in the little packets, the pink packet, the blue packet, the yellow packet. Avoid all of those. I would rather, if I had lunch with somebody one time and they're like, I'm really self-conscious eating lunch with you. And I'm like, I'm just a normal human. Yeah, but this tea, I need to sweeten it. I don't know what to put in the tea. They shoved the little container of sweetener packets to me and said, which one do I use? And I said, really? And he said, yeah, which one? And I said, if you're going to use one of these, use the white packet. And the reason, even though I've already prefaced this and told you white sugar is one of my demons, I don't like it at all. Why do I want them to use the white sugar? Because it's the least processed of the 4 sugars that are sitting on the table. The other thing is that the aspartame, the sucralose, the things that make up the NutraSweet, the Splenda, all of those, what is most detrimental about those products is that they are neurotoxic to your brain. And when I look at longevity, and I look at, it doesn't matter how long I live, one of the biggest things that I fear, maybe this is just because of my family history, but one of the biggest things that I fear is something like Alzheimer's, right? To me, as hard as it would be if I couldn't get around, to not be able to think, to not be able to read, to not be able to remember people, that is the most challenging of all the aging issues to me. So anything that can affect the brain is really important to me. So I'm gonna protect my brain. And so hopefully I'll help you protect yours too. So those are some sweeteners that we always avoid. Now, what can we do? What can we use when we're trying to bake some sweet treats at our house? We brought some, so here's our little basket. Some of the sweeteners, this isn't everything that you can use. And I'm going to tell you that if you're using sweets, you're not using health food. This is not health food. This is about having that extra sweet treat, right? If you think about, go back to the colonial days when sugar was $2.40 a pound. Why was it a treat? Because people couldn't afford it every day. Now they make all this sweet stuff so cheap that it's the easiest thing for us to buy and eat. So These sweeteners aren't always as cheap, but they are helpful. So let's just talk about some of these. So let's talk about agave first. And agave nectar, we don't have that one here, but agave nectar has a low glycemic index and it's a natural product. The challenge is that it's 90% fructose. So who's that going to be hard on? People who have liver issues, right? Which is going to be a lot of us. So just keep that in mind. Agave nectar is one that you can consider using depending on what you're looking for. It's a natural sweetener, so it's going to be less processed. That's one of the things I'm always looking for is what can I get the least processed and used, because the closer it is to its natural state, the safer it is for you. All right, next one is honey, and we do have some honey here. Raw, unfiltered honey, that's something that you really want to consider. If you get a natural honey, it's going to actually contain some electrolytes, some amino acids, so it's actually got nutrients in here, not just the sugar, which is pretty awesome to be able to get some nutrients in while you're getting your sweet treat. So honey is a great one to consider, and super sweet. Maple syrup's a fun one to use, and so maple syrup is interesting. So it's a natural sweetener, but one of the things about maple syrup that's interesting is that the grades are backwards. Okay, so normally an A is a good grade, but for maple syrup, that's the least good grade. So it doesn't matter. Most of what you're going to find in the store is going to be grade A, but if you get some really good maple syrup, it's going to be grade B or C. You can consider using maple syrup. Coconut sugar, this one is my absolute favorite, I think, when it comes to the sweeteners. It's actually made from the sap of the coconut tree, not actually the same place that you get your coconut milk. So it's a little bit different. It contains a prebiotic, contains inulin, contains magnesium, potassium, and what I love about it is how easy it is. You can use it as a one-to-one replacement for white sugar in most of your recipes. There's a few recipes where that might not be ideal, but you can use it as a one-to-one replacement. The other day I was in the store and they didn't have my favorite. I needed something that was granulated like that. And so I used date sugar and it worked exactly the same way. Date sugar is going to have fiber in it, which is awesome for us. And we want to have fiber in our diet. We don't have enough fiber. So if we can have more fiber in our foods than we had before, that's a great thing. There are several kinds of monk fruits that we can use. Monk fruit is sweeter than white sugar, so not everybody loves the way it works in your baking. Here's a monk fruit maple syrup sweetener that we sometimes use. You can get monk fruit in drops like this. One of the things that's great about the monk fruit is that it has a 0 glycemic index. It doesn't impact your blood sugar at all, so that's really awesome. Another one of my favorites, this is my version of candy at my house, and so I just literally eat dates as a sweet treat. They do have a high glycemic index, they're going to impact your blood sugar, but it does contain some vitamins and minerals. It's going to be something that is going to have your fiber in it, and it's going to possibly help with bowel regularity, which slow bowels are often associated with some of the sicknesses that we get after the holidays, and that would explain part of why that's happening, is you're not getting enough fiber. But dates is a great treat. You can eat them straight or you can use them to sweeten things in your recipes. So we also have our alcohol sugars. So those are all your sugars that end with an OL. And so you'll see them on labels that end in OL. One of the most common ones is xylitol. The great thing about xylitol is that it does not impact your blood sugar. The downside of xylitol is that it is a highly processed sugar, and for that reason, I use it sparingly, okay? I personally use it sparingly. That doesn't mean that you have to, but I'm just saying, like, for some people, this is a way better choice. Would I use it over the white sugar, the bleached white sugar? Absolutely, I would. But the couple reasons that we aren't sure about it is because it's a highly processed sugar, and it is very dangerous to your pets. So if you make any treats with xylitol, you can't share them with your pets, because I know those dogs, they're always like looking to be part of the party, and mine were doing that the other day, and so I was like, dude, what is up with these dogs wanting to be part of the party? But this is one that you want to pay attention to. And the last sweetener that I will suggest that we use is something called stevia. And so you've probably heard of stevia, but a lot of times it'll come in little packets like this. You're going to use a packet, use this one. Don't use the ones that they put out at the restaurant. So use this one. So stevia is a great sugar substitute. It's plant-based. The only challenge with it is that it sometimes Sometimes there's some digestive discomfort if you use too much stevia, but there's no calories. It's not really a sugar, it's sweet, and it has a 0 glycemic index, which means it doesn't impact your blood sugar immediately. So that's really a good thing when you're looking to choose a better alternative. Now, am I out here telling you, hey, you can just eat whatever you want as long as it's these sugars? There is no limit to how much you can eat. That's, as much as we'd love to say that's true, that's not actually true. But if you use these sugars instead, you'll have less health impact over the holidays. And that is what's most important, right? We don't want to enjoy the holidays and lose our health over it. I had a practitioner one time say, I think it's so strange that we celebrate all these big events and all our milestones of life with poison. Right? Because white sugar, if it really were to come onto the market right now, it'd probably be a controlled substance because it's so addictive. And as we're seeing more and more of our chronic diseases being linked to sugar, we know that we have to reverse this trend somehow. And so this is at least a step in reversing those trends. And so I want to leave you with a few of our favorite recipes. So we're going to be sharing these recipes with you. A couple of them that I love that incorporate these types of sugars is one is called a chocolate zucchini bread from a website called Elena's Pantry. That is a family favorite. My kiddos will sometimes ask for it. It's something that I will make a loaf sometimes and keep it in my fridge so that I have something sweet that I can go to when other people are indulging in those other treats. Is because I don't want to just completely not enjoy the sweetness of the holidays. I want to savor the sweetness of the holidays just like everybody else. And so if we can do something that will be less impactful, that's what we use. There's a paleo pecan pie that I've made in the past. Now, gosh, that takes you a bunch of maple syrup and a bunch of honey, I think. But you get the sweet, you get more of the fiber, you get more of the things that are good for you in the process. There is a dairy-free cheesecake that I love to make, and so we will share that recipe with you. So we're going to be sharing some recipes with you that I've used, that we've used, some of our Champions family has used, so we can do the right thing and help each other. And so if you find recipes that you love, we'd love to hear from you about the recipes that incorporated some of these better sugars so that you do not have the crashes after the holidays, right? So let's be prepared, let's be proactive, and let's still savor the sweetness of the holiday season. One of my favorite people to follow when it comes to healthier recipes is Danielle Walker. And I share with you my celebrations cookbook. In this cookbook, I've found a red velvet cake recipe. So she has several cake recipes with some of these better ingredients. And so this is one, my favorite is the red velvet. And I get a little beets, which is funny because you put beets in my cake, but don't put beets in my juice or my smoothie or anything else because I don't really like them. But the red velvet cake is one of my absolute favorites by Danielle Walker. And we'll be sharing some links to those recipes as well. We want you to savor the sweetness of the holiday season. Don't feel like you have to do nothing, but let's make better choices as we go along these last few weeks of the holiday season. One last piece to this puzzle of savoring the sweetness of the holidays is knowing that as much as I've tried to be perfect my whole life, but I don't like making mistakes. And I know most people don't, but sometimes we get this guilt feeling. We eat the bad foods and then we feel the guilt in it. And we don't want to feel the guilt of that necessarily, unless that's God tapping your own shoulder. That's a different story, right? But we don't really want to feel that. What we really want is to know what we can do when we eat something that's out of our norm or out of our control, right? Sometimes we find ourselves running around all day long and then we end up at dinner with somebody and they serve us food that, ooh, I wouldn't have eaten, but I've been busy all day, so I didn't work ahead and stuff like that. So some of the things that we can do, so it's our little bag of tricks. Okay, so if you're going to indulge in a little bit of alcohol during this holiday season, AF beta food, help your liver process that out overnight. Let's not let it get stagnant and stuck in your system. So there's your AF beta food. Also, if you eat that indulgent rich food, you know that food that you eat and then as soon as you eat it, you feel like you got a brick at the bottom of your stomach. You know what I'm talking about. So your brick at the bottom of the stomach, that's going to be your Zypan. If you have heartburn, you have indigestion, you want to put some Zypan into your program for the day. So you can reach out to us. Often Zypan 1 or 2 per meal will do it. If you know you're going to be eating a lot of indulgent food for the weekend, say you're gone for the weekend and you know you're going to be eating a lot of those foods, just be proactive. Put it in at the beginning. A lot of our people have some bloating, right? And this is true. So Zypan is more like heartburn and indigestion. Inzicor is going to be our answer if we're dealing with dairy. If you're sensitive to dairy, you get a little bloating, a little bit of just digestive discomfort. Inzicor, those are going to be your enzymes to deal with that. And what else can we use? Oh, did we mention, which we didn't, but we're going to mention it here. Did we mention how any of that white sugar, all that white sugar, it depletes your B vitamins. Who needs B vitamins? Oh, wait, that's me, that's you, that's everybody. We all need our B vitamins. So how do we replenish those B vitamins? With Cataplex B Core. So you'll definitely want that. You need your B vitamins for your energy. Your body is so dependent on the B vitamin complex. So that's going to be your full B vitamin complex right there. Food-based, so your body knows exactly what to do with it. It's not synthetic, not made in a laboratory. So that's a great product for us. So this one won't work quite as fast. This one is just for general digestive discomfort. If you live with that general digestive discomfort, Berberine Active is something you'll want to put into your system. If you have a tendency to run high blood sugar numbers, Berberine is a great choice for that. That's going to be an important one for people, especially if you already have type 2 diabetes or are pre-diabetic. That's going to be a really important one for you to use. Next up in our lineup of supportive supplemental aids for the holidays is our Intestinal Cleanse 1 is going to get your bowels moving. This happens so much. People are traveling, and a lot of people, they might not be prone to constipation, but traveler's constipation always hits. And so if that's you, work ahead of it the night before you leave on a trip. Go ahead and take some Intestinal Cleanse 1. That's going to be an important one for that. If those bowels slow down, you know what's going to happen? You're going to get sick. You always get sick. If you're around all the little kids that you're not used to being around, people are going to get sick. And so that is going to be your Congoplex. So you want to get Congoplex on board. This is your immune boosting supplement. Everybody should have it on board, especially our kiddos as we're heading into the holidays. And finally, I want to just note this, that sometimes the holidays, as much fun and it's festive, the lights and the glamour and the glitter and the paper and all the excitement, all the fun things, sometimes all that extra stuff makes you feel a little more stressed than you should be, or maybe that you feel like you should be. Two of our best friends right here are Mentran and Neviton. We often use them as a combo because your Mentran is your calming minerals and your Neviton is your calming herbs. So we put herbs and minerals together to make the best impact. Mentran also helps with sleep. So sometimes when we have all those to-do lists that's so long, your to-do list is so long, and then at the end of the day, you can't turn your brain off and go to bed when you're already exhausted and you know you have to do it again tomorrow. And so Mentran, calming minerals. So not just for the holidays, but especially during the holidays. And then finally the Neviton, just to help you to be more responsive. Sometimes these are the times when we don't want to be short, but we get short with our people, and that's not what we want to be. Your Neviton's going to help you to be able to respond to your people instead of react. And sometimes when we react, it ain't too good. Lots of tools. I love as people get used to knowing what to do with these. We're always available for you to answer a question of how to use these products, but as you get more used to it and you can do it on your own, that makes me so happy, because in the moment we need to be able to know what to do. And so let's go to food. Let's go to our dehydrated food in a bottle to help us handle all of the health issues that come up this holiday season.